And welcome everyone to another edition of Ocean Freight TV. I'm your host, Steve Herrera, CEO of Ocean Audit and Ocean Freight TV. You know, it's funny, just about 20 seconds ago, I thought of something really funny. I thought of a TV show that I loved as a child. It was, I think it was called, I think the character's name was Steve Majors, I want to say. And the show was called The $6 Million Man. It's a show back in the 70s, real hokey. It was about a guy that had problems in terms of a motor accident or some kind of military test accident, and they rebuilt him. They made him like a bionic man. He was like the precursor to RoboCop, right? But the title was really cool, The $6 Million Man. He had a bionic eyesight and incredible speed and just brain processing capability far ahead of the average man. You know, I kind of feel like that in a little bit for shipping. You know, I feel like over the last month or two, I've been on an incredible run tier for my clients. As you know, most of you that know me, I do ocean freight and global logistics refund recoveries. And the pace that I've been on is really a $6 million pace in terms of on average. I'm finding about $1 million a week in global ocean freight and global logistics and motor carrier refunds. Now, motor carrier is interesting, right? Because you say, well, Steve, you know, you cut your teeth on ocean freight. And of course it's true, but you know, who does pickups from the port? Who gets billed and gets paid detention and demurrage? You know, sometimes the trucker gets the bill, right? It's from the terminal, from the ocean vendor, from the broker, from the 3PL, the 4PL. So there's so many hands that are feeding this incredible container-getting monster that the recoveries and refunds that I'm seeing now, and this might be interesting, right, from my audience, is that, you know, now that CFOs and controllers have been past this this major blip, right? It's almost like this black hole environment that you know, nobody ever saw coming and knew how to dig out of. And it's almost like the paralysis by analysis, right? Or type analysis by paralysis type genre. And everyone's kind of waking up from this hibernation and saying, hey, you know, hey, I hear what this ocean audit is saying, that we have 3 years to recover our funds and 3 years to recover our money. You know, let's do it. I mean, the cadence and the velocity of recoveries has never been higher. In the 30 years I've been doing this, you know, as the guy, right, in ocean freight refund recovery for all the BCOs out there. And so I thought today's show was really appropriate, you know, when you start talking about the fact that ocean freight, right, was really and the title of today's show is Junk Fees. And Mr. President, sir, it's almost like, you know, I want to be at Kareen's press conference and raise my hand and you know, get a word in edgewise on, you know, hey, Secretary Buttigieg, President Biden, you know, at the State of the Union, you know, you railed against the ocean vendors for, you know, predatory pricing or making 10 times or the 20 times the normal profits. And now, you know, you come up with a really interesting vocabulary. And I really love this about the Biden administration. So they figured out junk fees, right? Well, what is a junk fee in terms of, you know, what the title is about? And I think that, you know, for what President Biden's doing, you know, he's saying, well, the airline ticket's not all inclusive, the baggage fees. If you cancel a car insurance payment or you get a car repossessed, you know, there's all these little add-on fees that, you know, $50 here, $80 here. Guess what? You know, everyone out there on the side of my voice knows that junk fees have been involved in shipping for a long time. And, you know, I think that's the interesting thing about it is, you know, what is a junk fee in shipping? And I put my little octopus here to kind of, you know, ratchet that up. And so, you know, this list is pretty short, but, you know, junk fees can emanate from, you know, the best quality players, right? Customs house brokers, 3PLs, 4PLs. They can be admin fees. They can be FAP fees. What's an FAP? Well, you know, freight audit and pay company, where they charge you, you know, $2 or $3 a line item, and they don't even audit it, right? It's just like, well, we're going to get into that in the show today, because today's show is about junk fees and shipping. And, you know, these are some that just, you know, rolled right off the top of my head. And I'm sure you have your own list, right? And this is one of the things that I find in my recovery auditing. When you look at junk fees and shipping, you know, we've been doing this for 40 years, you know. You know, I know my buddy is probably listening, John Monroe. Hi, John. You know, we remember, we're old enough to remember where we'd have messenger fees, right, on an invoice, where the messenger would have to go from, the freight cashier's office in Oakland to the freight cashier's office in San Francisco, right? Where, when I was at Sealand, in California, in San Francisco, we had the port office in Oakland and the cashier's office in San Francisco. I mean, I think we charged $25 to, courier over the documents to San Francisco for document release, so the clients could come pick them up. But junk fees have existed for neons, right, in shipping. And, I don't have to go too far to pull out I'm thinking of a company with 3 letters in their name, where, you might have 8 or 9 line items in their ocean invoice. And it's just, it's uncanny, right? How junk fees, have evaded oversight by the administration and the FMC. And now, and again, not being political here at all, but the sense that the junk fees have come out, and the word is, and I was just looking at the nomenclature, is it's a way to protect the American consumer. And this is so reminiscent of when Containergeddon came out, and it was Biden administration fights ocean shipping cartels to protect the American consumer, right? And then you drill down to that, and you find out that over the last 18, 24 months, the FMC has only been engaged in somewhat like $1 million or $1.5 million, maybe $2 million in detention demurrage recoveries. But again, keep in mind, right, that many of those detention demurrage issues that have been raised, they've been raised by BCOs to the FMC through attorneys. There's attorneys' fees, and the FMC and the Biden administration, they've never been overseeing ocean freight. If anything, as you know now, it's kind of quieted itself down, and their attention is now to the next shiny object, right? Junk fees in airlines, insurance, car rentals, and so on and so forth. We've all seen them, we've all done them, we've all paid them. I get it, but the thing is that these junk fees in shipping, and especially all these fees that BCOs are incurring, they are being passed down, right, in the form of higher prices at the cash register. So you have a retailer XYZ, that's charging $15 for a sweater, and all of a sudden it's charging $15.42, right? Because they're getting hit with additional fees and cost structures with regards to the global supply chain. So I think I wanted to just share that it's just the funniest thing in the world, and we can all relate that junk fees and shipping are 100% refundable if we can call them out and cite them as part of a service contract, an NVOCC service agreement, an NVOCC rate agreement. Should they be in? Should they not be in? Many times these junk fees and shipping, right, are tariff related. And if they don't get extrapolated or, extracted from the contract algorithm, they then default to the tariff algorithm, and then they appear on your invoice. So I also make the analogy that, it's obviously, I look at my business, and, it's easy to go say, yeah, the container rate was billed at $10,000, it should be $6,000. And that's a very significant, beautiful refund. But at the same time, if you have a junk fee for, $67.50 on every invoice, I'll give you a good example. I'll give you a great example. I was just doing a recovery audit the other day, and I saw a Panama Canal surcharge of $200 per container. Now, it didn't, excite me as much as finding a $10,000 error and a $200 error. But when you have that $200 error and you extrapolate it against 1,000 containers, wow, you're talking about some significant recovery that goes a long way towards funding different corporate ventures. So a junk fee, you could think of the Panama Canal surcharge, right, as a junk fee. I kind of do, I really do. So that's where I'm coming from. I think that we need to start looking at that micro-focused and razor-focused, just as we would be trying to get a refund on a $6,000 to a $10,000 container error. And I think nowhere more in the genre of what's happening in the fake out, the big fake out, is this whole FAP thing, FAP. FAP it just sounds wrong, right? It's kind of an ugly, amalgam for what it is, right? Freight, audit, and pay. companies that are out there that are often CFOs' life preservers or life rafts. And let me explain. So it's kind of a scratchy thing, but the whole thing of this kind of fidelity, right? So Fidelity Investments, Fidelity Stock, Fidelity Bank, it's strong, right? It's powerful, it's, safety and, all those great things. But the reality is that these are a bit mirage-y type genres when you start thinking about freight audit and pay companies. They're often a band-aid for CFOs. And they also get started, in the trucking genre. And then they were kind of extrapolated, or the systems were manipulated to include ocean, right? So if you look at, many FAP company systems, and, I'm talking about the big 5 or 6, we all know who they are. And, if you use, they use the word pro number, right? Pro number for ocean. Very few have kind of changed the nomenclature into, say, a BL number, or, you would almost never find a receive for shipment date in an FAP system as you would in, for example, my system, which is called Vessel.Voyage, a real-time pre-audit system. Now, again, I'm not here to promote Vessel Voyage in my system over FAP. But what I'm telling you is that the legacy of these FAPs, some of these have been around for, almost as long as Ocean Audit, maybe even longer. I don't pay invoices. So FAPs, the purpose of an FAP is to do the pre-audit, audit the invoice before it's paid, pay it, and then the company, the freight audit and pay company, fronts that money on behalf of the BCO, the shipper or the importer or exporter. So the problem is, one is that the FAPs are using predominantly EDI, which EDI sucks for ocean, right? I'll just come right out and be completely transparent. I told this story how I personally invested over 100,000 of my own money 5 or 6 years ago to build an EDI kick-ass tool for ocean only. It was great, but the problem is the EDI was so inconsistent. So we spend more time reformulating and correcting EDI issues than correcting the invoice itself. So I figured that wasn't the way. However, these legacy methodologies have coexisted for so many years now, but they're often baffling in the BS to the best of the C-suite. I like the way that sounded. It came off, kind of rolled off my tongue. You see what I did there? And I think the issue there is that CFOs use this as a life raft because they figure, well, it's almost like I made the analogy of a few years ago, actually probably more than 10 years ago. There was a mutual fund I loved. It was called USAA Cornerstone Fund. And what I loved about the Cornerstone Fund is that it had commodities, it had futures, it had energy, it had foreign exchange, and then stocks. It had everything, and bonds. It was one fund for all these great investment classes. The problem is the return crap because it was too vanilla, right? It included everything, so it wasn't like laser focused on, say, the tech sector, right, or the energy sector or the shipping sector. So it underperformed, and it's the same thing with FAPs, right? So FAP, listen. I'll be the first one in the world. The last thing I want to do is audit a truck bill from Akron to Tallahassee, right? But the first thing I want to do is audit a trucking bill that has paid detention or demurrage, because I'm pretty sure that somewhere else along the line, there's been a secondary invoice or even a tertiary invoice that has befuddled the payment system between the CHB, the broker, the trucker, and maybe even a 3PL, 4PL type company. So we have a lot of kind of sins from Containergeddon that are domestically transacted and related. Okay, so that's a given. But as far as the FAP is concerned, their problem is that, and again, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, right? But it's many FAPs would take a Kelly temp or a Manpower temp, right? And maybe, try him out and then convert him over to an auditor. But what do they know about Shanghai? What do they know about Mombasa? What do they know about, whether the feeder vessel left on a certain day or what the receipt for shipment date is? They don't know jack, right? So what I'm saying to you guys is that if you use a freight audit and pay company, you're getting sold a bill of goods. Yeah, they're great for trucking and they're great for parcel. But listen, for ocean or for global air, get a second look. And that's why I exist in terms of both post-audit. So I think that what you have to look at when you look at the FAPs, it's almost like this whole issue of forget-me-nots, right? Forget-me-nots is a beautiful wedding flower. It's specializes in fidelity. It's symbolizing love and togetherness. But forget-me-not is kind of a paradox, right? Because it's almost like the FAP wants you to forget me not that I'm like monopoly money. Every time I pass go, I'm collecting $200. Every invoice that I process for you, I'm getting $2, $3, $4, $1.80. And it doesn't really matter. What's the effort? What's the training? Who's calling them out? So, and that's the beauty of this, right? That's the thing of this, is that you hire an FAP company to freight, audit, and pay your invoices. But how do you know they're good, right? Okay, I hear your question, right? So you say, well, that's why we hire you, Steve, or we hire a post audit to come behind them, right? But if the post audit is great at trucking but sucks at ocean, how do you know, right? So that's the question I always ask thought leaders all the time that use FAP companies. And the bottom line is that, or the beauty of this is that if I had the choice between a company that had a freight audit and pay company and one that didn't, I probably would go with the freight audit and pay as the one that would yield even significantly more than the people that just did it internally. Now, again, there's issues on both sides of the fence of the coin, but I'm saying that when you outsource something to a party that has doesn't have the facilities or the faculties to really understand the nuances of ocean or global logistics, what are you really getting out of it? And I think that that's one of the challenges when you look at this whole illusion that's been created. And I look at it as like, okay, I've got this great, I see these skulls flashing, right? So I'm always like all about earning your keep. And when you earn your keep, I think you have to call the freight audited pay companies to the carpet here and, kind of challenge them that, hey, the ground is shifting beneath you. We kind of understand, what your game is, what you're up to. And the whole FAP illusion or myth is the fact that these FAPs are just minting, money because they're not really doing anything. And what's, the embarrassment, right, to have somebody like me come in and find, say, $1 million that the FAP should have found. I mean, that's eliminating the FAP. I have clients that are shifting the business from that FAP to another one because of my find. And so my find on recovery auditing, I think we're introducing a new genre here, a new theme that, hey, I can say, you could say, well, we're already covered. We have an FAP. We're already covered. And I would say, okay, great. Why don't you let me come in? I'm contingency based. Ocean Audit doesn't charge for its services unless, there's a recovery. And then you can validate your FAP, right? It's that simple. So I challenge every business in America now that uses an FAP to use me to validate the FAP's findings. And then, you will find that you're generating so much significant new money that you can either get the FAP to hire the right people or retrain them, or you can move on, or you can do it yourself, or you can let me do it. But I encourage you to say, hey, you've got to, I got a call from one of the FAPs. They said, hey, and I said, you want me to do this, right? The FAP is saying, well, we're great at parcel, we're great at trucking, but, would you consider, outsourcing, or can we outsource some of our ocean to you? And I'm thinking to myself, did I just hear what this guy's really asking me? This is the CEO of one of the top 10 FAP companies, and he's asking me to get involved. I mean, I won't name who it is, but it's just, I can tell you every time I see that company, it's like, yes, let me jump in on that audit right away. So I do want to say that you've got to kind of, fight the tape. I love the financial markets, and auditing has a lot to do with financial markets, and you're always kind of fighting the tape. In our case, or my case, it's the historic tape, right? That's run through the prices. You think of the old ticket tape, all this money being printed on ocean invoices, and it's like you got to rewind it, right? And get that money back, and you got to fight that tape. You got to jurisprudence. I don't know where that came from. You got to interdict yourself. You got to do an interdiction on fighting correcting the wrong that was happening to make it a right. And I think that's one of the most important things about understanding and dissecting when audits being done by unclean hands. That's a good way to look at it. So I think in retrospect, this ocean freight kind of junk free zone, and I'm an old school Blackboard guy, but I think you have to, as your BCO, you have to rethink the FAP fees. I think you've got to institute some chargebacks. If you like your FAP and you're not really ready to give them up because your domestic spend is pretty significant and you like what they're doing domestically, hey, institute a chargeback. I mean, if I come in on the ocean and find $1 million that they should have found, don't you think that they should pay, 10% or 20% of, what I find, back to you as a chargeback? You have to start thinking geometrically that ocean is complex and there are going to be mistakes on ocean because ocean is an art and a science. So I think you have to also challenge the FAP in real time by saying, okay, hey, our FAP just approved these. Steve, can you take a look at these? So it's almost like a snapshot, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways to improve on this, but it starts with finding the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is the fact that you wouldn't give a plumber your wisdom teeth, and you wouldn't give the dentist your sink that's leaking, right? So this is what happens a lot with regards to FAP companies, where they give somebody that's great and maybe have come from let's say the Tuscaloosa, Alabama LTL facility, and they know everything there is to know about LCL trucking. They wrote the Bible on it, right? You could get them in a cocktail party and they could tell you nuances on LTL and invoicing. And they would make me look embarrassed about my lack of knowledge on it. It's the same thing with ocean. That LTL auditor is also looking at your ocean, and shame on them, right, for doing that. And that's the big thing I want to create here, is that you've got to find a way to claw back these junk fees from the ocean environment. And a junk fee in my mind is the FAP fees, the excess of the FAP fees being charged for excessive invoicing that hasn't really been looked at. You've got to also claw back detention, demurrage, CHB administrative fees, 3PL fees, 4PL fees. There are billions in junk fees in ocean freight that just equate the same way as the Biden administration is trying to get back or claw back junk fees for the airline industry or insurance issues or car issues or warranty issues and so on and so forth. And these all affect the American consumer. So that's my show for today. Actually, you've been an incredible show. You've been a great audience to watch this. I can't wait to see the replay, and we'll share content across our worldwide distribution network. Of course, you've been watching myself, Steve Ferrara, CEO of Ocean Audit and CEO of Ocean Freight TV, with regards to bringing you the best and the greatest and latest in informative TV programming in ocean freight, supply chain, global logistics. Feel free to reach out to me at Steve F at how about we try a new email address? That would be fun. I own the best email address property for the auditing industry. So one new email for you guys is steveF@freightAudit.com. You'll be seeing more about the metamorphosis of, or the amalgam of freight audit and ocean audit as we start to look at global and package refunds for everything having to do with your transportation programs here in America, Canada, and across the world. So from my house to yours, from my TV studio to your TV rooms, I wish you all a great weekend, love and peace. And we'll see you on the next edition of Ocean Freight TV, only live with Steve Ferrara here in Miami, Florida. Have a great weekend. Love you guys.